Well, friends, we are in a series this fall on the spiritual disciplines, habits that heal. I told you the spiritual disciplines, and you might prefer to call them exercises or rituals or practices if the word discipline bothers you, but they're simply just the things we do. They're our conscious participation in our own transformation. They're the things that we work into our lives to help us grow, to join God in our spiritual growth. And I told you a couple weeks ago that there are really two categories of disciplines of abstinence and disciplines of engagement. And in disciplines of engagement, we do something. We engage. We participate. Last week we talked about two engagement practices in prayer and meditation, things we have to actively do to grow. This week, we're going to talk about two disciplines of abstinence as we look at silence and solitude this morning. Silence and solitude. And as we prepare to jump in, allow me to just read sort of a smattering of some biblical text this morning that's going to really set the tone for our conversation. So friends, hear the word of the Lord. Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. Be still and know that I am God. In returning and rest, you will find your salvation. In quietness and trust, you shall discover your strength. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. When you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent. Those who guard their lips preserve their lives. And from the Gospels. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and left the house and went off to a quiet, solitary place where he prayed. Jesus often withdrew to lonely, quiet places and prayed. Because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, Jesus said to his disciples, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves to a solitary place. This is the word of the Lord. A simple working definition for silence and solitude: intentional time in the quiet. To be alone with ourselves and with God. Pretty self-explanatory. I want to briefly just touch on each one of these, silence and solitude, as we talk about them. Now, they do obviously tend to go together. Silence is, of course, just being quiet. Now, there are two dimensions, however, to silence. We can talk about external silence and we can talk about internal silence. External silence, right, is when we go away somewhere or we hunker down in our room somewhere and we try and preserve as much actual quiet as possible. We try and shut down all the outside noises. And so there's no crowds, no traffic, no music or podcast in the headphones, no TV on in the background, no Bluey on the screen with your kids in the living room, right? No book in your hands, no words. No words coming to us and no words coming from us. Maybe it's out on a trail. Maybe it's in your bedroom. Maybe it's up early in the morning before anybody else wakes up. Maybe it's in your office, but somewhere truly quiet. And when we practice silence this way, this external silence, there's no need to add anything. You don't need to bring your Bible or a journal or turn on worship music. You just need to try and be quiet. Because there's something deeply healing about just being quiet. There's something profound that can happen to us and through us just by not talking for a while, believe it or not. I mean, as a general rule, see if you guys agree with me here, the more we talk, the more we sin. Do you agree with that? Or maybe I should ask your spouse, or your coworkers, or your children. My kids would tell you that's true. Proverbs says that in the multitude of words, sin is never lacking. Never lacking. And remember, this isn't just about like the words that we speak out loud from our mouths, right? Because we are like saying a multitude of words from our fingertips and our keyboards by email and in the comments section. And we talk through our thumbs as we text. More and more in our culture, we are defined by, I think, and explained by our multitude of words. So much so that I think that we probably all have this like general fear that if we don't speak, if we don't reply, if we don't post, if we don't answer, like we might just be falling off the map. We might be forgotten. People might not take us seriously. Beyond that, I think some people have a really deep fear in a world like ours of just being left out, left behind, considered insignificant, ignored. Now, on the flip side, I think we're also constantly taking in a multitude of words. I mean, man, culture has shifted in the last 20 to 30 years. I mean, like never before, I think we've come to overvalue just like mass amounts of informational content. And just think about what is available to us in our back pocket all the time. And I love it. I'm a learner, right? Like I enjoy a podcast like everybody else. I like to be listening and reading all the time. But friends, this too, this like constant influx of like words, content, information, it will sap our souls if it's not held in tension with the discipline of silence and solitude. Now, I think silence, as healing and as life-giving as it is for us, it's actually really hard to practice in our day. It is. So let me just put that out there as a disclaimer. This is not easy. Our world is noisy. I mean, everywhere we look, it's noisy. And we've become so accustomed to it that I think we're like kind of addicted to it. We're addicted to the noise. I mean, what does it say about us that we have to have like music or TV on in the background all the time? That we can't like be at the gym or on a run without something in our ears? I just saw an advertisement for a new set of earbuds that they promise won't hurt your ears all night long. Like people are sleeping in their earphones? Man, it's almost like we're running from something. Or maybe we're trying to drown out the internal noises, because there are internal noises too, aren't there? All that mental clutter we have, our minds that just won't slow down, they just won't stop. And it's everything, right? It's like the shopping list and the carpool schedule, and then it's like the hidden fantasies and all our little anxious thoughts. It's revenge plots and it's memories, it's bitterness and worries, it's what ifs, it's squirrel, like it's all of it, all the time. So much internal noise. And so no wonder that it's just easier to turn on the radio to try and drown it all out. I think that noise, it kind of acts as a sedative. We use it to numb. It could be noise pollution, but I can tell you right now, this much noise at us and in us all the time, it is not good for us. It's terrible. Seeking out silence is going to be crucial if you want to connect with God. If you want to grow your faith, you can't get around this, friends. And that is because God doesn't yell or scream. That is what Elijah learned when he was hiding in the caves and God showed up. God wasn't in the big noisy, the big demonstrations of power. God wasn't in the thunder and the earthquake. God was in the quiet. God won't yell. God won't scream over the noise of your life. Mother Teresa, she figured this out. She said, we need to find God, and he cannot be found in noise and restlessness. We have to be quiet. We have to get quiet. We have to be alone. But I think there are probably a lot of us that, if we're honest, we're a little bit afraid about what might happen if we do. Dallas Willard says that silence is frightening because it strips us as nothing else does, and it leaves only us and God. And in that quiet, what if there turns out to be very little to just us and God? I think that's a question we kind of have to sit with. Now, beyond silence, the discipline of solitude, pretty obvious too. It's just about choosing to be alone for a time. But I do want to mark the distinction between solitude and being alone and loneliness or isolation, because they are not the same thing. Some people, I think, sometimes lump them together and argue that they're the same, but they're really not. And we know there's a difference, right? Let's just even think about our own lives. How many of you at some point have ever felt profoundly lonely while being surrounded by a crowd of people? Anybody else besides me? Yeah, this is like a common human experience. Because loneliness isn't actually about who's in the room. It's about us. It's about us. But when we spend time in intentional solitude, we are choosing to be alone for a purpose, with purpose. We're choosing to separate from all the other things that we use to prop ourselves up to define us. Our titles, our roles, our relationships, the words we speak to defend ourselves, all the content we take in, we let it all be stripped away. Willard goes on to say, solitude frees us. The normal course of day-to-day human interactions locks us into patterns of feeling and thought and action that are geared to a world set against God. Nothing but solitude can allow the development of a freedom from the ingrained behaviors that hinder our integration into God's order. Because when we're alone and when we're quiet, friends, when all of that is stripped away, we get to ask ourselves, what actually defines me? I mean, who am I really? Who am I really? Now, there are a number of folks that argue that this is just isn't this just like a self-indulgent discipline for all the introverts in the room? All the people that just really enjoy being alone all the time? And I'm going to say no, but it is easier for them, to be sure. Extroverts, you need these disciplines more than anybody else. More than anybody else. And second, I will say that there is a really big difference between solitude and isolation. Wayne Cordero puts this better than anyone I've ever read. He says, there is a world of difference between isolation and solitude. They may contain similar characteristics, but in reality, they are worlds apart. Solitude is a chosen separation for refining your soul. Isolation is what you crave when you neglect the first. Isn't that so good? Oh, solitude is a chosen separation for refining your soul. Isolation is what you crave when you neglect the first. I love that so much because I can relate to craving isolation when I have not been alone and quiet frequently enough. Anybody that has small children, I can tell you right now, that feeling of wanting to go lock yourself in the bedroom and hide from the world, cover your ears and be like, don't bother mommy. That's what you're craving, isolation. You don't have to be a mother of small children, by the way, to feel that way. But for me, when I start to crave isolation, when I start to look deeper, it is always that I have not been alone and quiet frequently enough. There's something that is not settled in my soul. And it's not actually isolation I want, it's solitude. It's connection with my Creator that I'm longing for. Because genuine silence and solitude, they're actually not about running away from the world. They're about a rhythm of retreating and returning, not running and hiding. Because when we retreat from the world for a time to be alone and quiet before our God, we return to the people we love, to the world we're called to serve with renewed energy and vision and purpose. We actually have words that, when we speak them, they might offer life. It's amazing. Thomas Merton, the most incredible monk who's recently deceased, Read him if you don't know who he is. He says, I go into the desert, not to escape others, but in order to find them in God. These disciplines, they heal us so that we have something to offer the people we love. So we have something of substance to say. And so let's talk about a few of the benefits to silence and solitude, because these are hard, and you're going to want to know, what am I going to get out of this? What am I going to get out of this? Here's what you're going to get out of this. You will experience God, and you will come to see yourself more clearly. That is absolutely what will happen. Second, you will learn to speak by refraining from speaking. That's really the only way to learn how to speak well. You will learn to control your tongue, as the Epistle to the James instructs us. You will learn how to speak appropriately. You will also begin to see how frequently you have a propensity to exaggerate, or to stretch the truth, or to lie. That will become abundantly clear to you when you get alone and quiet. You'll begin to see how frequently you often use your words to prop yourself up, or to defend yourself, or to make sure your reputation is secure. Because when you can't talk, you'll suddenly be aware of how much you want to do that. And you'll have to let God defend your honor. You will learn to say what you really mean. Proverbs 25:11 says, a fitly spoken word is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. That's such a lovely line. But these disciplines, they teach us how to offer a fitly spoken word. Richard Foster is a teacher on the spiritual disciplines, and he writes this. He says, if we are silent when we should speak, we are not living the discipline of silence. And if we speak when we should be silent, we again miss the mark. Let's discipline ourselves so that our words are few and full. Let's become known as people who have something to say when we speak. So you will learn that through silence. And then another benefit, it will really nurture your relationships. It will help you come to appreciate the relationships you have in your life in a really profound way. Merton said, it is in deep solitude that I find the gentleness with which I can truly love my brothers. The more solitary I am, the more affection I have for them. Solitude and silence teach me to love my brothers for what they are, not for what they say. So those are some benefits. I want to give you some cautions. I'll always tell you the truth. That's my promise to you. And so here is the truth about practicing silence and solitude. Not being able to talk, if you truly limit yourself and start practicing these, you're going to feel out of control. You're going to feel deeply out of control and unsettled. Good. That is the point. That is the point. Let God be in control. Let God take control. The other thing I want to tell you is when you get alone and quiet, and again, you probably know this, and this is why you fill your life with noise, those like intrusive thoughts, they're right there. That old memory that you have shoved so far deep down because you do not want to think about it anymore, it's still right there. Maybe something you haven't even thought about in years and you thought you had handled, there it is, surfacing. When you get alone and quiet, as a good professor once told me, expect the skeletons in your closet to come jumping out and doing the polka. They will come out. Be ready for them. Don't be surprised. Willard says this. He says, we face a terrible trial in silence and solitude, for it serves to crack open and burst apart the shell of our superficial securities. It opens out to us the unknown abyss that we carry within us, and it discloses the fact that these abysses are haunted. So I would just want you to be prepared. Your abysses are haunted, but you do not go there alone. You go there with Jesus Christ. The other thing I would tell you is to get a little comfortable with uncomfortable silences. This is a relationship we have with our Creator. And so can you be comfortable in the silence and not need to fill it with all the words? Leave room for silence, for awkwardness. It'll be okay. And then the other thing I just want to warn you is your family, roommate, neighbor, coworker, whatever, they probably won't understand. And so you have to communicate in advance if you're going to practice these disciplines, or your kids will be offended. If you stop talking to them or stop answering text messages. So just over communicate what's going on. We don't want to threaten the people we love. Also, you don't have to be a weirdo. If you're practicing silence and solitude and you're on a hiking trail and a stranger says, "Good afternoon," you can say, "Good afternoon," and keep hiking. Don't be legalistic about any of this stuff. A couple practical things, how-tos. First, I would tell you to just start by noticing the moments of silence and solitude you already have. Like when you wake up in the morning and you have just that few minutes of like quiet and alone. Or as you're falling asleep at night. Maybe you're standing there making a pot of coffee, or you get stuck at a red light, alone and quiet. Those moments can be a chance to recalibrate and recenter ourselves if we use them intentionally. I would encourage you to find a quiet place. That can be your home, your office, favorite trail, whatever. Sitting in your car, in a shady parking lot on your lunch break, whatever works. But your whole point is to actually dwell on the silence and the solitude. You're inviting Jesus to be your only companion. And so don't take your Bible, not initially. Don't journal. Don't fill it with worship music or noise. Like actually just sit still and quiet. Just welcome the silence and pay attention to what surfaces. Invite Jesus to walk with you into those haunted abysses. And I would tell you to start with a regular rhythm of 5 minutes if this is new to you. If you cannot center down in 5 minutes, then maybe start with 3 minutes. But set an alarm on your phone so that you know when to start and when to stop. Give yourself some permission to just take deep breaths, but work up to an hour or two. Some of you might already be able to center down a lot faster than that and be able to do it right away. Great. I would encourage you to have at least 1 hour of silence and solitude in your week for the rest of your lives. If you can't even imagine sitting quiet and alone for 1 hour, start with 5 minutes. It might take you 2 years to get up to an hour. Fine. Set a goal and work toward it. No judgment. Again, our world is bananas. It's noisy. People everywhere. It might take you a minute to learn the rhythm. Then I would encourage you guys to find once or twice a year where you go on a silence and solitude retreat. And what I mean by this is book a hotel room or an Airbnb. There used to be monasteries all over the place, but they're shutting down, unfortunately. They're still, just not in Utah, there's not. There are some in other places of the country still, but the Episcopal Church downtown has a little retreat center, humble little lodgings, very affordable. Take nothing. Go be quiet and alone. See what comes up. I've been doing this for my entire adult life. It's probably the reason I'm still standing, honestly. I'd encourage you, if you want to get really brave this week, to try and go 1 day without speaking. Again, you're going to have to alert the people in your life. I mean, no email, no texting, and no answering. And you might not be able to do that. Maybe you can only do an evening. But don't open your mouth. And then go to sleep without opening your mouth and wake up and just reflect on what that was like. Some of you are not big talkers and you're like, not a big deal, Jamie. Some of you, you might die. I promise you can do it. After you get this rhythm in you and it becomes natural, try doing things you love while you're practicing silence and solitude. Paint, hike, clean your house. If you can focus and you can invite Jesus as your only companion, then you can do stuff while you do it. But work this rhythm into your life. Get alone and quiet. Because in silence and solitude, in turning off the noise, in saying no to traffic and chaos and activity and the nonstop stimulation, we slow down long enough to feel all the stuff that we have been shoving deep down. We allow the truth of our life to surface. And we bring it to our God who already sees it, who already knows us. We face our desire and our hunger and our thirst for God, and we face our lack of desire for God. We face our brokenness We face our petty temptations. We face our weird motivations and addictions. We face all those intrusive memories. We expose it in the quiet with our God. And friends, when we do this, when we allow God to pierce through the giant, just mad rush of voices that come at us, just the voices of maybe it's mom or dad, voices of social media, voices of the news, voices of culture, voices of the enemy, all the voices, and we just learn to listen to the voice of the Spirit, we find new freedom. We start to recognize what's true, and we start to recognize what's been a lie all along. Our approval and disapproval doesn't matter. Achievements, they don't matter. What matters is that our God calls us beloved. And we come home to God. You know, before that whole encounter in 1 Kings where Elijah has this crazy experience where God is not in the thunder and not in the earthquake and not in the fire, but is in the silence, the very next line in that text is God whispering to Elijah and saying, Elijah, what are you doing here? And I think maybe you've heard a sermon where that sounds like kind of a harsh and critical question, like God's saying to this guy and he's all burnt out and overwhelmed, what are you doing here, Elijah? That is not the voice. God is saying to Elijah, what brought you today to this moment? Where do you find yourself right now, Elijah? What are you doing here? Because now you're finally quiet and alone. So what is actually going on inside of you? And that's the question we get to answer when we practice silence and solitude. Amen.